Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we are back with our latest Star Wars Shatterpoint battle report that took place at Tabletop Republic in High Wycombe. We filmed this in December of 2023 using some of the newer models that had just been released. My opponent Reese brought the dark side of the Force with him, with his two strike teams consisting of Count Dooku, Jango Fett and the Magna Guards, followed with the newly released Empire forces of Darth Vader, the Stormtrooper Sergeant and the Stormtroopers. To counter these, I brought the Ewoks of Endor, who had heard the rallying cry, and Logray was joined by C-3PO and R2-D2 alongside the Ewok Trappers. And then in my second strike team, I brought Leia Organa, Paploo and the Ewok Hunters. Reese also provided the beautifully painted terrain for our battle today, and I really like the walkways here particularly. That has inspired me to then go back and repaint some of my own, seeing how good it looks with the yellow effect there. This is the first game that we are playing using the new Ewok and Empire forces, so no doubt we'll get a few bits wrong. I particularly find that the Ewoks have a lot of intricate mechanics to keep an eye on to really make the most out of them. We've already set up the mission as Sabotage Showdown, as we both knew that was the mission deck we were going to bring with us. After we roll off to see who goes first, Reese wins and starts deploying. He deploys Count Dooku, Jango Fett and the Magna Guards on the right hand side of his deployment zone. I then deploy Leia, Paploo and the Ewok Hunters in a similar fashion on the right hand side of my deployment zone. This leaves Darth Vader and his Empire to deploy in a slightly more central position to the left of the Count, which finally then allows me to deploy Logray and his squad on the left hand side of my deployment zone. My thoughts here are, with the Ewoks having a lot of movement abilities that they can activate spending some force, to try and spread out as quickly as possible to take some of those central objectives before the Empire and Separatists can get anywhere close to them. Let's see exactly how that goes. We both have a shuffle of our own order cards and an offer to one another to also have a shuffle of each other's order cards before we proceed with the game. We end up revealing the first struggle as Set the Charges. We flip on the 6 active objectives, which are all but the one in the very centre of the table. Reese then reveals his first order card as the Stormtrooper Sergeant, and decides to pay 1 force to put him in reserve and activates Count Dooku instead. After using his tactic ability, he then dashes forward with the Magna Guards also dashing forward to start controlling some more central objectives. Dooku then decides to advance forward into a more advanced position and takes cover as his second action to give him a hunker token. I then draw Leia and decide if it's the right time to use her or not. I do decide to go with her and use her tactics ability to advance the droids up the ladder, followed by her using a force to complete a defensive manoeuvre, which again allows her to climb up the ladder and grants her a hunker token. As her second action, she also takes cover, which grants her another hunker token, and at the end of my first turn, I secure 2 objectives and score 2. The Stormtroopers are then drawn from the order deck, and it's their turn to activate. Firstly, we check some range to see how close they would need to be to Leia in order to open up and fire at her. They decide they're going to advance as action number 1, before Reese spends the force to activate their assault tactics, which gives them both a free dash and would allow them to take 1 damage if they would like to gain a focus token. After measuring up, they're now both in range and decide they're going to open up on Leia, who does benefit from cover and the hunker tokens that she took in her turn. The first Stormtrooper rolls, and once expertise have been converted from the first attack, Leia suffers a total of a pinned condition and 2 damage. Leia did roll 4 expertise and could have benefited from a reposition had she not been pinned by the Stormtroopers. The second Stormtroopers then take a pot shot at Leia as well, and Leia takes an additional damage from the trooper's expertise, but does manage to block the rest of the attack. Reese then controls 3 objectives, and the momentum starts to swing towards the dark side of the Force. I do start to wonder if activating Leia so early was the right thing to do, or if it would have been better to pay some force to put her into reserve. In my next turn, I then reveal the Ewok Hunters order card, and having heard the laser blasts that are happening just ahead of them, I spend 1 force, which allows them to activate their stealthy approach ability to move forwards. This gives them a free dash, and then also gives them the choice between taking a focus token or a hunker. I decide that the focus is the right thing to do, as I'm hoping that they're going to sling their bows and arrows back at the stormtroopers who have just opened up on Leia. After looking at the range, as action 1 I complete a move action, with one of the hunters climbing onto the second walkway close to Leia. The second action then gives them the attack on the stormtroopers. Leia contributes with some coordinated fire and gives the troopers exposed for the attack. The first Ewok unleashes arrow fire, leaving 2 crits as successful for 2 damage and the pinned condition. As the second Ewok fires, the stormtroopers are now benefit from their defensive expertise. However, this doesn't help them as I roll 3 crits. Unfortunately, this is only 3 damage in total, and the pinned condition again, which does then give them a 4th damage, and a shove on the troopers as well. As I shove them, my Ewoks follow in haste. I continue to hold 2 objectives and score 2 points at the end of my turn. The struggle now 1 space on my side of the momentum track. Although I think that is a good turn for the Ewoks and they've put out some real damage, Reese then draws Magna cards from his order deck. He decides that they're going to advance forwards, which allows them to start controlling more objectives. They also then take cover for a hunker token each, and at the end of Reese's turn he's securing 4 objectives and scores 4 points for the Separatists. I then draw the Ewok Trappers, and first thing I do is have a reread of their unit card just to remind myself of some of the things they can do. Firstly, I decide they're going to advance forwards towards the Magna Guards that have now taken an advanced position on the left-hand side of my board edge and the objectives over there. I'm then also spending a force with them for them to complete a stealthy approach, which gains them the dash and the focus in the exact same way that Ewok Hunters did in my previous turn. This allows them to get within melee range of a single Magna Guard, and the time is right to start unleashing their spears and sticks as I attack them. The first Ewok gets 3 successes and an auto damage, which deals out a total of 4 damage, the pinned condition, and then also a shove on that first Magna Guard. The second Ewok doesn't have as much success with the Magna Guard, as the Magna Guards manage to block all 5 of the hits that I do get. However, from their expertise, I do get off 1 auto damage. By moving these Ewoks forward, I have now taken control of that objective and secure 3 points, which for the first time means the struggle finishes in the middle and grants us both momentum tokens. What Reese has done really well there with his Magna Guards and his Stormtroopers is what I'd hoped to have done with my Ewoks. However, he managed to activate them first, which is move towards the centre of the table and start to control some of those middle objectives before Reese's characters could get anywhere close to them. Unfortunately, I now am on the back foot slightly, as Reese's characters are already there and ready to confront me. Reese then reveals the first Shatterpoint card of the game, and seeing where my Ewoks have moved to, he opts to activate Count Dooku. This allows the recently damaged Magna Guards to also move into a more advanced position and threaten the 2 droids controlling my objective, before the Count moves to engage the Ewoks. He takes the focus action before he decides to swing into the Ewoks, Dooku showing his ruthless side with 2 successes coming through to deal 4 damage total and also give the Ewoks the disarmed condition. Thankfully, this isn't too much damage for the Ewoks and could have gone significantly worse had they rolled some more successes or some more crits and my Ewoks not been able to block as much. Reese scores 3 points once again for the Separatists. I now draw C-3PO and R2-D2 and have a think about whether they are the right unit to activate at this time or not. Seeing where the Magna Guard is, my first choice is to attack them. Here I'm purely looking for a shove, which will force the Magna Guard back to the ground level, allowing me a bigger move in my activation. And although the Magna Guards roll exceptional defense, I do get 1 crit through, which does give them that 1 shove I'm looking for, allowing me to push them back towards the ground level. This allows for my second action to be a move action, where they move to a more right-sided position, careful to keep within range 2 of the objective to ensure that that would stay with me if the Magna Guards do move back up. We both score 3 points, and once again we finish in the middle for an additional momentum token. Knowing that it's then either Jango or Vader to activate, Jango is drawn from Reese's order deck. firstly spending a force to activate his jetpacks, which then allows him to take a focus action, which then gets another jump off as his first action. This leaves him in deadly range of the Ewoks, and rolling to attack them with 3 successes, Jango deals 5 damage in total, gives out the exposed condition, and gets a 3rd jump off of the turn himself. This wounds the Ewoks, unfortunately, and it's a good turn for the dark side of the Force, as that wound provides an additional momentum token and also secures a 4th objective for Reese, a big swing in their favour. I then draw the Ewok Traps card and choose the objective that Jango Fett and Count Dooku are currently holding. This special card allows me to roll 1 attack dice, and depending on the result of that dice, can do one of 4 different things. I roll a fail with my attack dice, and this only gives a pinned condition out to both Jango Fett and Count Dooku. I should have known that is probably how the rest of the battle was going to go. After that effect is resolved, I then get to draw another order card, and I draw Paplu and begin to activate with this furry bear. As action 1, I decide to move, and I follow this up by spending another force to complete another stealthy approach. This allows me to get into melee range of the stormtroopers. Action 2 will then be me attacking the troopers, with Leia also providing some coordinated fire to give them that exposed ability. This allows Paplu to also decide whose expertise he wants to use when attacking due to his ability by attacking a unit that's got either the pinned or the exposed condition. After rolling dice and comparing what the expertise looks like, I decide that Paplu's expertise is going to be the best to use. This is because I don't roll a lot of expertise, and Paplu's expertise chart goes in the opposite way than the way you would expect it to, where only rolling 1 or 2 expertise is a lot better than rolling 4 or 5 expertise. Although with the blocks from the Imperials, they do take 4 damage and a shove as well. However, I'm fully aware that Paplu is now riskily exposed ahead of a menacing Darth Vader activating. However, by moving up here and completing this, I was able to secure an additional objective. Logray then helps out as I've wounded the stormtroopers in this turn. This allows me to roll a dice and see what happens. This gives Paplu an additional dash, which he uses to hide back slightly, hoping to stay out of reach of the Lord of the Sith. It is then Vader's turn to activate. And the first thing that he does is spends the Force, which allows him to dash thanks to his anger, hate and aggression ability. Followed up by move action, this does put him in range 2 of the lonely Paplu. However, instead of attacking, Vader elects to take cover as action 2. This allows his order card to be shuffled back into the order deck as he hasn't wounded a unit in his turn. Once again, this scores 3 points. Knowing that my final 2 cards are either going to be Logray or the Shatterpoint card, I draw Logray, which is not really the one I wanted. Although, thanks to Leia sharing out the Ewok and Rebel tags to all the units, Logray is able to dish some movement or a hunker token out to the majority of my force, as they're all in possession of the Ewok tag and then the Trooper or the Scout tag. This is from Logray's Tactics ability, which is great because it doesn't have a range on it. It just benefits every model that contains either that Ewok Scout or Ewok Warrior tag, which is great because for my entire force, other than R2 and C-3PO, that means it's going to benefit all of them. As I know that there is Darth Vader in the order deck and the Stormtrooper Sergeants left to activate from reserve, I move Logray slightly towards the right hand side and then follow this up with a stealthy approach to give some more support to that right hand side where it feels like Darth Vader is going to start slicing through my models. I then spend my last force to activate Elder's Command, which allows my Ewok Hunters to make a 5 dice attack. As the Stormtroopers are wounded, this is going to be targeting Darth Vader, supported by some more coordinated fire from Leia. However, this goes just about as well as you would expect it to, and I only get 1 crit that ends up doing damage. This puts the pinned condition on Darth Vader alongside 1 additional damage. Once again, I score 3 points, the momentum staying on Reese's side, which scores me an additional momentum token. Reese then draws Vader again from his order deck and removes the pinned condition that's just been applied to Vader. Vader then moves towards the bottom of the ladder and climbs to the top directly in front of Leia. After spending a force for more anger, hate and aggression, Vader has no qualms swinging his lightsaber into his daughter. Although Vader does roll one fail in his attack dice, this gives him the exposed condition back. However, a total of 5 successes is enough to deal 10 damage to Leia all in one swing, which wounds her, gives her the exposed and the disarmed condition in the process. An incredible result for the Empire forces, and shows absolutely how ruthless Darth Vader can be in these games. As he gets an additional momentum token for scoring a wound, Reese then can take control of a 4th objective, which is enough points to give Reese the first struggle. That was a particularly painful experience for the Rebel Alliance and the Ewoks, and shows exactly how menacing Darth Vader can be. As we now have a quick cleanup, we remove all of the active objective markers and reset the objectives. I draw the second struggle card, which is Don't Expect a Welcome Party, and have a decision to make about which of the 2 layout options I go for. I ultimately believe what I think is going to be the correct one, with the 3 objectives running from my left hand side through the middle towards Reese's right hand side. Fortunately for me, this mission allows me to refresh force when I activate with my Shatterpoint card, and having none, this means that I know that my next draw, which is going to be the Shatterpoint card, will allow me to refresh 1 force. As I activate, the double points objective becomes the closest objective to me, which is currently being controlled by C-3PO and R2-D2. This makes some of my decision around who I'm going to activate, although the other half is a particularly difficult decision. Although wounded and battered, I decided that it's time to activate Leia again. She starts by descending the ladder in front of her from her tactics ability, and I really want to use one of her action abilities here. However, only having 1 force and wounded means that this isn't really an option for me. So my choice is to then move towards the centre objective, hoping to wound the Magna Guards that are now going to be directly in front of her, as this way I can control that second objective as well. I call in some coordinated fire from the Ewok hunters, which would normally dish out the pinned condition. However, as the Magna Guards already have this, it's an easy automatic 1 damage that gets applied to the Magna Guards, which makes Leia's job slightly easier, particularly as she won't benefit from any of her offensive expertise due to her disarmed. As a result of this, however, only 1 success comes through, which deals 1 damage and the strained condition. I do have the droids to secure my back objective and score 2 points from there. Reese finally has to activate his Stormtrooper Sergeant that was put into reserve in turn 1, with the middle point becoming a double points objective for this turn. As action 1, he moves forward to support his Stormtrooper pals, and in action 2 decides to shoot at the rebel leader Leia, who is now left exposed in the middle of the board. Supported with some additional fire from his troopers, the Stormtrooper Sergeant doesn't roll any fails, and I wish I could say the same for Leia, who suffers the wrath of the troopers with 6 successes coming into her. In total, this is going to deal 4 damage to her, 2 shoves, and also give the Stormtrooper Sergeant a reposition at the same time. It definitely could have been worse for me, but it has pushed Leia off of that back objective, and Reese is going to then secure the other 2 objectives and score 3 points in total at the end of his turn. It's not quite the result that I want at the end of the first struggle, and now as we're able to shuffle up our order decks and refresh my force, I roll my dice to see where double points goes to, and double points moves to the objective furthest towards the back table edge for me, closest to Reese's deployment zone. I end up drawing C-3PO and R2-D2 from my order deck, and in this turn these aren't the droids that I'm looking for, and I spend a force which will put them into reserve. As my next card, I then draw my Shatterpoint, which due to the special conditions of this mission allows me to refresh the force I've just spent putting the droids into reserve. For the second time, I opt to activate Leia with my Shatterpoint card, and she has a choice of who she's going to give her free advance to from her tactics ability. After some deliberating and deciding who the best person is going to be, I decide that the best person to use is Paplu the Ewok, and advance him forward to try and put some pressure on the back objective there. Leia then moves up as her first action, and whilst I think about what to do, I end up looking at her abilities and deciding to spend some force and use an explosive charge. In hindsight, this isn't a great thing to have done, as for the cost of 2 force, I only deal 2 damage to the Magna Guards, which isn't that brilliant given that the Stormtroopers are both wounded. However, it was something fun to do, and that's something that I had to try at least once to see exactly how well it worked. As her second action, I then opt with Leia to attack into the Stormtrooper Sergeant, knowing that the Stormtroopers are wounded. This gives the pinned condition from the Ewoks coordinated fire once again, and unfortunately Leia's roll only again gets 1 success, which is enough to put out 1 damage and the strained condition onto the Stormtrooper Sergeant. However, by doing this does mean I get to take control of that back objective, and once again I score 3 points. It's now Reese and the Empire's turn to refresh their order deck, and redraw from the top. Reese draws his Stormtroopers as the first card, and has a decision to make about whether he's going to be going after the Rebel Commander or move into a more central position. He decides to use the action ability for the Empire as the first action. This will then push Leia away and also gives her the exposed condition, which will potentially open her up to a lot more damage. The Stormtroopers then continue their assault and activate their Assault Tactics ability, taking a focus and firing into the wounded Rebel Commander. As the first one rolls, Leia won't benefit from any expertise and rolls 2 blocks and takes 4 total successes from the first round of Imperial fire. This is 5 damage in total, the strained condition, the exposed condition, and a shove, and it isn't looking that good for the Rebel Commander. As the second trooper then also decides to open fire into her, and although Leia does benefit from expertise this round, it's another 3 successes for the troopers, dealing a total of 4 damage, and this gives her a second wound. Incredible that has happened so early in the game, although this is what happens when I've misplayed and put her completely out of position. This secures an objective for the Imperials alongside a momentum token for wounding Leia, and it's another good turn for the Emperor. I then draw Ewok Hunters, and double points moves towards the objective I'm in control of, thankfully for me. As I spend the force to use their stealthy approach ability to start off with once again. As the first action, I decide to attack, splitting my Ewoks fire. The first into the Magna Guard and the second into the Stormtroopers. I'm hoping here that I can get the wound off on the Magna Guard I need to be able to gain some more momentum and try and swing this back into my favour. The first Ewok gets 2 crits through to the Magna Guard, which does deal the necessary damage to wound them. Logray then allows me to roll an attack dice as I've wounded something, again rolling a fail which would give me a dash, although I opt not to use this. And the attack against the Stormtroopers with my second Ewok Hunter, I again roll well and 3 successes get through for a total of 3 damage alongside the pinned condition. By wounding those Magna Guards in the middle, I'm then now able to control that middle objective and secure 3 points once again for the Rebel Alliance. Reese then draws into his Shatterpoint card, and before determining who's best to use, his dice change the double points objective to the one closest to his deployment, and conveniently the one that he is currently in control of. This makes his decision somewhat slightly easier, as he can activate Darth Vader, who again with some anger, hate and aggression, alongside a focus action, absolutely takes his former droids to the cleaners. They can't save against him, and with 7 total successes, Darth Vader does enough damage to one-shot the droids, alongside giving them the strained condition and another shove. My defensive expertise does allow for a free dash once they've been pulled apart and taken to the scrap heap, but it's not enough to stop Vader from taking control of that objective, as he shoves the droids off of the objective and then also has a free move up from his expertise and his combat tree. He will control that objective, and it is another good day for the Empire, as they will score 3 points and also control an additional momentum token as they head into the next round. In my turn, I roll off for double points, which stays in that same location. After drawing from my order deck, I draw the Ewoks Traps special card, and whilst choosing the double points objective, I roll an attack dice again, which is another fail, and gives all the troopers the pinned condition. After I've activated with this, my Ewok Trappers activate, who recover from their wounds. Once they've recovered, Jango steps in with his not so fast ability and deals 3 damage to the freshly healed Ewoks straight off the bat. I'm trying to work out if there is a world where I can get the Ewoks onto the back objective by using a combination of their move action and a stealthy approach. It would be a big call to do, as if made it would use both of the force that I have left for me very early on in my game. Instead of this, I start off and decide to be as much of a nuisance as possible, taking a focus action, followed by deciding to attack the Mandalorian bounty hunter. The first Ewok uses his sticks and stones to great effect, with 7 hits coming in, but that Mandalorian Beskar armour comes to Jango's rescue as he rolls 5 blocks. So with those 2 successes, he takes a total of 3 damage and a shove from the Ewok, shoving Jango towards the second Ewok for a bit of Jango Fett ping pong. The second Ewok then attacks, and Jango again rolls well with 4 blocks. However, this is only able to block one of my hits, as my 2 crits still come through. This gives him another 3 damage and a shove once again, this time pushing Jango Fett away from the Ewoks, and at the end of the round I score a solitary 1 point, which drops the struggle directly in the middle and grants us both momentum tokens once again. Reese then draws and spends the force to place Jango Fett into reserve, not choosing to activate him this turn. Instead he draws his Stormtrooper Sergeant, and after the double points roll, this moves the double points firmly to the objective sat at the feet of Darth Vader. This allows Reese to focus entirely on his plan for this turn. He starts off by bringing some Imperial firepower to give the disarmed condition to Paploo, and then we have a small discussion about the state of play of all of the Ewoks that are surrounding the Stormtroopers over there, so that he can decide who is the best person to take down. As action 1, Reese decides to take a focus action with his Stormtrooper Sergeant, which allows him to then attack into the Ewok hunters. A total of 9 attack dice are rolled into the defenceless Ewoks, and although I managed to roll 4 expertise, this isn't helpful as 5 successes still get through. Along with the pinned condition from the Trooper's expertise, a total of 5 damage hits the Ewoks, a shove, and also 3 heals to the Stormtroopers as well, allowing for some conditional removal and healing his wounded teammates. At the end of the turn, it's another 3-point score for Reese, and this isn't looking very positive for the Grand Army of the Rebellion. I then have a bit of a risky turn myself, having rolled double points staying on the same objective that is currently controlled by Vader. I decided to activate my droids, thinking that if I can push Vader off of that objective, this could be a big scoring round for me. After they recover their damage, they take a focus action, trying to prod and poke Vader. And all I'm looking for here is 1 success to get a shove, which I desperately need, to push Vader off of that objective. After rolling, I end up with 2 successes, which gives Vader 2 shoves and also 1 damage. However, what this does mean is Logray is not feeling particularly comfortable, having just seen the Dark Lord drop down right behind him. However, more importantly for me, it does secure me that objective and scores 3 points, dropping us back into the middle and giving us both momentum tokens once again. In Reese's turn, double points moves to the objective he is currently in control of, and he draws Vader back from his order deck. Sensing blood, he spends a force to dash because of his anger, hate and aggression ability, and is ready to swing his lightsaber into Logray the Little Ewok. It's another excellent roll for the Dark Lord of the Sith, with a total of 8 successes coming in. It is going to be a painful turn for Logray, who takes all of the damage needed to give him a wound, alongside with an exposed, a disarmed and a shove. Somehow I still haven't learned that Darth Vader is an absolute beast who is going to go around one-shotting the majority of my units. Vader then jumps up to the walkway himself, which gives an additional momentum token for the Imperials and scores 2 points for Reese, leaving Reese just one shy of winning the second struggle and ending the game. Although I control 2 of the 3 objectives, I'm not feeling overly confident. Double points does move to an objective I control, which is great news for me. I can then activate Paploo from my order deck, and whilst I think about what the right move is to do to try and control some objectives, as action 1 I recover off the pinned condition and then spend some force to complete more stealthy approaches, which is fast becoming one of my favourite abilities. Spending my last force, I can then activate Fearless and Inventive whilst attacking the Stormtroopers. This gives me an additional 4 attack dice as I'm currently engaged with 2 other units outside of the one that I'm attacking. Here incorrectly here we apply Leia's coordinated fire, which we shouldn't have as she hasn't got the force to use it, and this is something that we'll look at a couple of other occasions in the game. However, we still convert the expertise as normal, so it doesn't actually have any real impact on the game. I decided that I'm going to use the Stormtrooper's expertise to get some auto damage in there, and then alongside that, Paploo deals 5 damage, the pinned condition, a free reposition for himself, and a couple of shoves. And amazingly for me, this puts another wound on the Stormtroopers. I get a momentum token for wounding the troopers, and as I roll my dice for Logray's ability having wounded someone, this is going to give Paploo a free dash, which I opt to use behind the building to try and put him slightly more safe, and scores me an additional 3 points in total. As Reese activates, left in his order deck are going to be Count Dooku and the Magna Guards. Reese rolls double points into the objective that my droids are currently controlling, and knowing this, Reese opts to activate Jango Fett from reserve, as he is looking to get forwards and put some pressure on those droids, potentially taking that objective if he can pull off a couple of shoves or some cool conditions to get the droids out of there. Spending a force, Reese uses the jetpack ability on Jango Fett, which removes his pinned condition. And here we have a little back and forth as we decide that we're going to rewind the entire turn. Reese is looking to get towards my droids, but as we've worked out, a combination of not being able to shoot them due to goodness gracious me, the droid's ability that allows them to not be the target of a range attack whilst there's an Ewok within range 3, and Jango being engaged, not being able to make a full advance and only being able to use the dash movement, this means that this isn't possible. As a result, we rewind things, and Jango focuses as action 1, removing the pinned condition as he is unable to then use the jetpack. He then takes aim at the Ewok trappers. With the exposed condition on them, I get no blocks at all, leaving the Ewoks at the mercy of Jango, dealing out 6 damage and giving them another wound, gaining yet another momentum token for the Empire. Although this only scores 1 point, this does finish us in the middle of our struggle and gives us both an additional momentum token. Knowing that, on my next turn if I roll double points onto one of the objectives I control, I'll score enough points to win this struggle, meaning this turn for me is a bit of a recovery turn and a prepare for the next round. I end up drawing Leia from my order deck, recovering damage as she was wounded, and also losing the strained condition off of her. I choose to use her tactics ability to move Logray into the fray, and then decide I'm going to take aim at the Stormtrooper Sergeant. By moving Logray up, I'm slightly trying to prepare for the next turn. Again, we use some coordinated fire from Ewok Hunters as I aim at the Stormtrooper Sergeant. However, having the disarmed condition, the attack completely whiffs, and my 2 successes are easily blocked by the Stormtroopers. As a second action, I'm then looking to move her to get ready for Struggle 3. Not knowing what objective is coming, I'm taking a guess that she'll be moving towards an objective that will activate in the next round, and I score the points necessary to win Struggle 2. We move on to Struggle 3. A quick clean-up time, and we draw Struggle 3, and this is drawn as Get to the Hangar Bay. And Reese turns on the 3 objectives lining across the middle of the map from left to right. As we do this, I do realise that Leia is completely out of position. Trying to play tactically has backfired, and she's now going to contribute very little towards this third struggle. As we enter the third struggle, Reese draws his Magna Guards as the first activation of struggle number 3. Determining what the best course of action is for them, After healing up from their wounds, we talk about the state of the minis from a health perspective, particularly around that middle objective. Double points moves to the left-hand side of the objective as I was looking at it, the one that's firmly controlled by Count Dooku and Jango Fett. After healing the Magna Guards and recovering their strained condition, they then take a move action which clears the pinned condition from one, whilst the other is left free to move into the centre objective. Swinging into the Ewok Hunters as the second action attack. Only one success comes through, which is great news for me, but does deal 1 damage and a shove to my Ewoks, which means that Reese will control that centre objective and does score 3 points at the end of his first turn. As I then start my turn, double points stay where they are, and my last card to activate is Logray. He heals up the Ewok warriors, and the Ewok scouts get a free dash from his tactics ability. And having spent all of my force for this turn, it leaves me with very few options as to what the Ewok Elder is going to do. After I have moved my models around, Logray then recovers his wounds from where Vader took him to the cleaners yesterday, and I start getting able to move Leia and Papalu from those back objectives into the fray slightly more and closer to the action. As action 1, I decide to recover the last condition off of Logray, and then I swing with Logray. Again, I forget that coordinated fire now costs because Leia is wounded, but thankfully it doesn't make a difference as I swing into the Magna Guards, who roll an incredible 5 natural blocks themselves. This does leave 2 successes and an automatic damage coming through onto the Magna Guards, for a total of 4 damage and then also the strained condition. I'm only going to score the 1 objective I control, but I do gain a momentum token as the track has finished on Reese's side of the board. Reese then activates Count Dooku and uses his free dash to remove the pinned condition from his tactics and also give the Magna Guards a dash too. Double points moves to the objective that is currently in my control. And as the Ewoks next to Count Dooku are currently wounded, there is nothing that is going to stop him from completing his full advance, and he does so to advance into the centre of the table. He's then in a target-rich environment and has multiple different options of who he can attack, who he can try and go after, and who he can get off of objectives. He swings into the newly healed Logray, who's moved up into that centre of the table. Logray does roll 4 blocks, and Dooku finishes with 2 crits coming in for the Ewok, for a total of 3 damage and a shove on Logray. Reese then scores, and will continue to move closer towards winning this struggle. At this point, it isn't looking great for the Ewoks, and the Empire and Separatists are certainly in a very strong position going into the final few turns of the game. It's going to take somewhat of a miracle for the Ewoks to be able to turn it around. I now get to shuffle my order deck and refresh my force again, and although the majority of my units are heavily wounded, this makes the 6th force even more precious as it's going to cost more. I draw C-3PO and R2-D2 as my first card, and decide again the best thing for them to do is to go into reserve. I then draw the Ewok Hunters, and they complete a move as they look to support taking some objectives in this turn. Using a stealthy approach, this then gives them some additional movement, and they look to focus fire on different targets in this turn. One firing on Jango Fett and the other onto the Magna Guards. The stealthy approach does give the Ewoks that additional focus as well, to try and maximise the most of their attack dice. I try and stay just out of range of being in melee with Jango, as I would like to make the most of my ranged attack, which is slightly better. However, as I fire at Jango Fett, this roll doesn't go very well at all, and I only roll 1 critical, which Jango takes as he manages to block the rest of my normal hits. This gives him 1 damage and the pinned condition. The roll into the Magna Guards goes slightly better, and I roll a total of 3 crits and an auto damage, which gives out a total of 4 damage and the pinned condition. Unfortunately, this is just not enough to wound him, as I would have needed 1 more damage to wound him. I'm then going to score another 1 point, and this game looks ripe for Reese to take in his next turn, as he either needs to take control of the final objective, or do 1 wound to a mini to gain a momentum token, that will allow him to win. Count Dooku is drawn from the Order deck, and after a focus action throws 8 dice into Logray looking for that wound. However, this is probably the worst roll of Reese's game, and only rolls 4 successes. This allows Logray to block all the potential damage that comes through, and manages to survive the Count's attack. In this turn, Reese is going to score 3 points, and again moves 1 point away from winning the third struggle. This does try and give me at least one more turn to try and work some rebel magic. I draw Paploo as my order card, and my final order card of the game, and double points is going to move into the middle objective. I'm trying to look at what I can do to continue the game and make sure it goes on for as long as possible, and ways that we can swing things back into the favour of the rebellion. It doesn't look particularly hopeful, and after working out some potential options, Paploo is going to move as his first action, spending force to try and do some stealthy approach to get him as close as possible to the objective and to just be as disruptive as he can do. Spending an additional force, I'm then going to activate Fearless and Inventive once again, and I'm going to be attacking into Count Dooku, hoping for what I can only describe as a bit of a wonder roll. I think in this game, Paploo probably wants to be in and amongst the action a bit more. Once he's got into the combat, he is particularly a handful, and using abilities like Fearless and Inventive and his expertise ability to be able to choose to use your opponent's expertise or your expertise is something that is particularly strong, and does make him someone that you're potentially going to want to try and team up with another secondary or a primary to go after one of your opponent's primary units. Once again, I incorrectly apply coordinated fire from Leia, and as a result of this, the Count's expertise don't get converted, and Reese rolls no successes at all. As a result, Dooku takes 4 damage, the disarmed ability, and a shove that comes into Dooku from my successes. And Dooku uses his Surely You Can Do Better ability to modify one of my hits into a fail. As a result, Dooku is then able to activate his ability, Twice the Pride, Double the Fall, and after the shove, he moves back into range to contest the objective, before throwing his 5 dice attack into Paploo. Primarily, this allows him to remove the disarmed condition that he'd just been given, and does nothing further than that. At the end of the turn, I score 1 point, and after this, I know that everything is all well and done at this point. Reese's final activation becomes Vader, and at this point, it's about how much damage Vader can deal out before winning. Filled with more anger, hate, and aggression, he marches towards the Ewoks, taking a focus action and swinging into the Ewok hunters. Again, Vader rolls an absolute mountain of dice, and although the Ewoks manage to block 4 of the hits, the damage is done, and Vader ends with 4 successes, dealing another wound to the Ewoks, gaining a momentum token, and truly showing why he is the Dark Lord of the Sith. Victory will then go to the Separatist and Imperial forces. Looking back, I think the right thing to do was to move Paploo and Leia to try and control the objectives on the board edge for Struggle 3. This would have put me in an advantageous position as we went through. However, the struggle chosen wasn't meant to be, and I'm sure there was some synergy missed with the Ewoks, particularly with C-3PO and R2-D2, who for me felt particularly underwhelming throughout. But as it always goes, playing with unpainted minis, your dice roll much worse. Thank you to everyone for checking out the video. If you're still around for this part, thank you very much. You're awesome. A big thank you to Reese for the game. And do check out the other Shatterpoint content on the channel and the other couple of battle reports that we've done. And we'll see you in the next one.